Hello, good morning.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see so many familiar faces. Thanks for the introduction, Shimon. Yeah, we are here to talk about ABM 2030, the yellow brick road to real results.
Got a nice promotion here.
Exactly, perfect. So, oh, hello. Oh, we're missing the slides. We keep going, or? No. So what we're going to be talking about when we get the slides is how Becky is looking to scale up ABM at Dash Zero. So Dash Zero is on a very exciting growth trajectory, and obviously that requires some pretty significant marketing effort and some pretty powerful ABM to drive it. And so we're going to be hopefully digging into that. Looking over at the desk.
Nick, maybe we can do our intros.
Yeah, let's do intros. Great idea, Becky. Okay, dive in, please.
Cool. So I just noticed there, I had been given promotion. I'm not the Chief Revenue Officer. I am actually the Director of Revenue Marketing for Dash Zero. And what Dash Zero do, we're an observability platform. And for anyone who knows that space, it's incredibly busy already. We have been in business now for 16 months, going live, and on Monday we announced unicorn status. So just to give you an idea of the growth that we have been on already, it is phenomenal. 600 customers in the first year, and I came in November and took on the role of Director of Revenue Marketing then. So we've got some pretty big goals to keep growing, ultimately. We announced Series B with 110 million funding this week as well, and that gives us the fuel, ultimately, now to grow. So we are looking at sort of starting this year on 3 million in RRR, the start of this year. We're going to get to around about 40 by the end of this year if everything goes to plan. So I want to sort of set the scene a little bit on the scale of Dash Zero and sort of what my goal is this year by running the marketing team, ultimately.
Yeah.
Nick?
And as Director of Revenue Marketing, you've got a huge remit around actually making that revenue number happen, right? It's not enough just to do nice marketing, we've got to actually get the commercial outcome.
Yeah, we'll dig into that definitely as to how we sort of make the revenue possible. But yeah, within my team, it's sort of everything from customer marketing to events to website to graphics. It's sort of the whole suite of things really that sit within my team. So it's a very busy year ahead.
Yeah. So I'm Nick Mason, some familiar faces, as I say, in the audience. I'm CEO and co-founder at Turtle. We're one of the sponsors for today. We are a revenue content platform, which means that we help to connect the dots between all of the investments that we make in content as marketers and the commercial outcomes, so typically in terms of pipeline and revenue. So yeah, that's us, that's what we do. Good to get on if we're with the slides. I mean, should we try and start without the slides? I mean, should we be brave and try and
we could go blind,
use the time? See. Should we do that?
It's a bit of a test, right?
Yeah.
When we've actually
Why not?
this.
Let's see how well rehearsed we are. So where this all starts is ABM 2030. So we commissioned a report at the back end of last year. We spoke to 300 of the largest enterprises that we could get our hands on, 100 of the most senior ABM marketing leaders within those businesses, and we asked them a range of questions. What keeps them up at night? Where are they looking for growth going forwards? Where do they think the opportunities are? Where are the risks? All that kind of great stuff. And using that, we pulled that together into our report, ABM 2030, which charts the opportunities, the risks, and the things that forward-thinking ABM leaders are doing right now to position themselves well against all of the change that's happening, so that when we get to 2030, they're in pole position and they're really leading the charge. So that's what the report covered. And in sort of really high-level terms, what we found is that there's a huge amount of disruption going on in the world of marketing and in ABM specifically. And typically the report focused on looking at GTM disruption, technology disruption, and also geopolitical disruption. So Becky, I wonder if we can talk a little bit about GTM disruption from memory.
Let's give it a go, shall we? Yeah, so ultimately there's a few things that we're obviously hearing all the time, right? AI is the biggest sort of disruptor that we're all facing constantly, right? You know, the zero-click searches, there is so much happening, and every day I'm sort of being told more and more, like, have you seen this tool? Have you tested this out? Are you trying to grow this area, right? And I'm sure all of you are facing the exact same at the moment. It's a real change that we're going through. On top of that, obviously, there's the buying journey, which is constantly evolving. Now, especially linked to AI there as well, like people are using ChatGPT, for example, to do their searches, and then they're no longer sort of doing the Google searches, the events, that sort of thing. They're looking at sort of what comes up on AI. So all of us are now having to focus on not just sort of where we're showing up on LinkedIn, where we're showing up at events, what content we're delivering, but actually how are we now scalable in AI as well, right? And that buying group as well is ever evolving and it's constantly changing. You know, Sixth Sense do so much great sort of data and reports on the buying journey ultimately and how much is done within the dark funnel. And that's something that we're all having to think about all the time is, you know, when people are looking for a new vendor, for a new tool, generally that first person they think of is the one that wins. Is the one that wins the deal, right? So how do we become the first vendor people think of? Now, especially like I mentioned, the crowded market that I'm in, there's a lot of legacy players. There's big names out there that do amazing jobs. So how do I create marketing that becomes like the first vendor people think of, that doesn't get lost within that dark funnel? It doesn't become part of the exercise that's, you know, let's just look at them to tell the team that we've assessed other people ultimately, which is often what it becomes like, right? So it's pretty scary. There's a stat that I think is on the slide that says 92% of CMOs, wouldn't pick that career path now because it's such a data-heavy role. And to me, that's something that is really terrifying. I'd like to become a CMO. That is my ultimate career path. To see that data is pretty scary, that it's moved from that amazing creativity that a lot of marketing was all about, and it's moved into the sort of data-heavy role now, ultimately. And I got into marketing because I love being creative, and that to me was something that was really important. It's quite scary.
Yeah, and the trick, particularly with AI and all the disruption there, is that the weighting of the technology side of things is getting greater and greater, which I think feeds into that 92% stat. So as we think across those three key elements from the report, the GTM disruption, we're seeing zero-click search go up all the time. I think the stat in the slide is about 65%, and it's growing. We're seeing huge depression on sort of the share prices of people like HubSpot and Monday.com. I think when we were talking about this in November, they'd seen a 35% drop in their share price. As we look at it today, it's 70%. So that's carried on at pace, and that's really the market reacting to, you know, what's going on with the world of GTM. I think we're about to get some slides soon. I think we've done okay. Hey, there we go.
There we go.
Thank you, Shimon. Thank you. All right, should we look at the slides? Let's see what we've covered. You've met us. Thank you for your patience. You've met us, Becky and Nick. So as I said, ABM 2030 report, we produced it at the back end of last year. There is a QR code which you're very welcome to scan. There'll be one at the end as well. It really is a great report. We've actually got comments and quotes from some of the people in this room, which makes it extra great. And over the next 20 minutes, as I said, we are going to walk through some of the key findings. So what we found in that report, and I've covered this, so I'll go quick, somewhere over the rainbow, things got a lot harder for B2B marketers. The world has changed, things have got much more difficult, and the tornado of change has not overlooked the world of ABM. And we've heard some of those comments this morning from the likes of Robert and Richard, talking about the changes around commercial proof that we need to provide, the need to personalize, all of these things. ABM is in flux as much as the rest of B2B marketing. And so the question, as I said earlier, is how are we going to not just survive, but actually thrive? And that's what the 2030 report really dived into. And so this is, I think, about where we got up to. Now we've got the stats, so you can read them for yourself. We were talking earlier about the buying group picking the winner, was 77% there. I think Kerry shared that earlier. And Becky, it was 80% relying on zero click, so we actually undercooked that number a little bit. And I think, I don't know whether you covered tech disruption or whether you want to say a few words about that point.
Yeah, I think, like I said, the AI piece, right? We're all just seeing such a significant shift here, and it's quite scary, isn't it? Like, only sort of 50% are using AI right now, but if you think about some of the questions that I'm getting, I'm sure you're getting this too. You know, a CEO is saying to me, how can we do this with AI? Do we need to hire? You know, do we need to bring in an agency to create a video, or can you just jump onto video? And I think a lot of us are seeing this shift right in AI, and it is really reimagining things, but not for everyone as well, which is pretty crazy.
Absolutely, and that's what, as we said earlier, and well done for getting the 92% right, bang on the nose. That's giving rise to this stat over on the right-hand side, which I agree with Becky, is slightly terrifying. The last one that came out in the report is geopolitics, right? And we put this together more than sort of 6-8 weeks ago, and unfortunately that prediction from the World Economic Forum has turned out to be very true in the first quarter of this year. And the point here is that governments are becoming active players and not just referees. And the reference that I had was for Greenland, which is kind of old news now. But we're really seeing governments change the way that they're interacting with the world at large, and as it says there, being players, not just referees. And 68% of global experts expecting a fragmented, multipolar world over the next decade. I think that the events of the last few months have probably proven that beyond any kind of reasonable doubt. So the first observation, we're fully caught up, is that tornado of change is here to stay. Very unlikely that any of these things are going to go away anytime soon. The second observation that we had, and this has come up multiple times through this morning already, as I said earlier, is that marketing is well and truly on the hook for revenue. Looking at Becky's role, for example, Director of Revenue Marketing, I mean, the clue is in the name. A couple of stats here from Gartner. With account-based everything, everyone, but especially marketers, is focused on revenue, not just MQLs. We've spoken about that earlier. From our own report, we found that 47% of the marketing leaders that we surveyed experienced a very sharp rise in revenue expectations. And an interesting one over here from Iconic. So this is Mark Zuckerberg's venture capital fund that he runs. 72% of the portfolio companies within Zuckerberg's VC are comped on close one revenue. They comp their marketing leaders purely on close one revenue, which shows for those forward-thinking, very well-backed, funded companies how important the marketing focus on those commercial outcomes is becoming. And I don't have the delta on that stat, but I imagine it's only going in one direction. So, and of course, the rise of revenue marketing.
Yeah, so, and it's actually where Nick and I met. I was doing this talk in London about sort of the demand gen versus revenue marketing and how this is this shift that I'm certainly seeing, I don't know if any of you are as well, where the demand generation job title is shifting towards a revenue marketing job title. We've always been seen as a cost center in marketing, and I think it's about how we can shift that narrative and take control of that revenue. Like, we've always been on the hook for it, right? But we've sometimes focused too much on the leads, the MQLs, the SQLs, the funnel, the process. So I created a bit of a framework here where you could look at the difference between demand generation and revenue marketing. And it's a bit of a volume and a vanity metric thing, ultimately. I know, and I learned very quickly, that if I turned up to a sales meeting and I said to the sales team, we scanned 2,000 badges at that trade show. Amazing, 2,000 leads are in the business. You can imagine the look that I got, right, from the sales team. They don't care about how many leads were scanned. What they actually care about is who from their target account, who was in the ICP, are we doing it again, can they close a deal from that event? That's what matters, right? So I sort of shifted my thinking into, and my language as well, right, into talking about sort of the target accounts, the opportunities we can create from this, like who from our ICP was there. And rather than presenting that lead number, that would be like an internal figure we could keep within marketing to just check sort of what's going on and how we're doing things. But I won't turn up now and talk about leads in front of any of my sales org anymore. And I do a lot of hiring as well in the company, and obviously where I'm growing the Dash0 team at the moment, we are hiring a lot in both sales and in marketing. And I really listen out to how people talk in these interviews. So when I'm interviewing marketing, for example, I want to make sure when people are talking about examples of things they've done really well, I want them to talk about the full funnel experience. I don't want them to talk about how many leads a campaign drove. I'm actually listening out for what pipeline it created, or what close one business it created, that revenue element that's really important. And the same for sales on the flip side. If I'm hiring in sales, I want to hear how they're going to work with marketing, how they're going to show up, how they're going to take this information, build partnership, right? ABM is the perfect example of a partnership in this. So is that the bottom there, the focus on the shared business goals? Nick mentioned about sort of comping people on close one business. That's exactly how I'm comped, and that's how I'll comp my team as well, on close one business, because it is the North Star for us. It's what all of us care about, it's what everyone's interested in, it's what fuels the business growth ultimately.
Yeah. Thanks, Becky. And I think it's so fascinating, in a business that's looking to more than 10x in 12 months, how important those factors are in the hiring process, and actually the people that you're looking to bring into your team. The fact that you're majoring on these things on the right-hand side is quite interesting and quite new. So, where we've got to through that first section is a bit of a summary here, which is the pace of change is blistering. We've looked at various different dimensions of that. There is no sign of a slowdown. I don't think anyone in the room would probably bet on any of those factors slowing down over the next 12 to 18 months. And as Becky has just really nicely taken us through, proving that ROI is a must. If it doesn't move the revenue needle, don't expect funding. And frankly, actually, if you're in Becky's team, don't expect a job, because if you're not able to drive the revenue number, you're probably not in the right place. And so for many marketers, this is a switch to so far so good to so far so stressful. And so where does this leave us as ABMers? Well, on the face of it, we're actually sitting quite pretty, because the stats tend to suggest that ABM is actually coming good through all of that noise and all of that change. So 77% of businesses report revenue growth from ABM, and given everything that we've just said, that's quite a healthy statistic. And 89% that they get better ROI from their ABM than from other marketing activities. And we have a last one here from Forrester that 23% of global respondents reported the ROI of ABM was 51 to 200% higher. So on the surface of it, ABM is smashing it in this new world, doing a brilliant job, and what could possibly go wrong? Well, as always, many things can go wrong.
Yeah, 1 in 3 tend to fail ABM campaigns, and I think, it's great to hear so many succeed, 2 in 3 succeed, right? That's a positive shift on it, different outlook on it. But 1 in 3 do fail ultimately. And I've worked at companies before when ABM was a bit more of a newy, flashy job title to have, and everyone was sort of bringing in an ABM expert in the team. But what I experienced in that company was the ABM person that we hired worked in silo. They decided the ABM campaign. They did not connect with sales. They did not look at the target accounts. They decided everything themselves. That was one of the 1 in 3 that failed, unfortunately, and that is the reality on it. But when we do have the great success, what happens to the targets? They go up, right? We all know that, right? If things go well, they all go up. So they keep driving us more and more, 10x, 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 all the time.
Exactly. And that creates a challenge, right, for scaling ABM.
Yeah. So let's start on this slide. We've got the unhappy CFO on that top corner there. We are putting money into this, we're putting resource into this, and ultimately it can start nicely. We're seeing some early results, but it's just flattening out. We're still spending money. We are not getting the outcomes that we desire. We've lost that peak now. We've just dropped off and we're just sort of continuously going, right? The CFO's annoyed. We're still spending money, but we're not getting the results. I was on a call with my CEO this week, and he said to me, we want to do that compound growth. Week on week, we need to be 10% better than we were the previous week. And that is the expectation. So this is not going to make him happy if I start to drop off that 10% very, very early.
And typically this happens when we're scaling ABM programs because friction starts to creep in. Things that are manual processes, things that need to be done repetitively and at scale, they tend to plateau, and we tend to struggle to get the outputs to keep up with the investment. This is a very familiar thing that we tend to hear. Whereas what the business is really looking for, Becky, certainly your business, looks more like this.
It's a happy CFO. That's what we all want to hear, right? Happy CFOs give us more money, and that's what we all want to do for more marketing. And we can only do this if we are creating those scalable and efficient programs, right? We don't want to do things manually. We don't want to put more resource into things and keep spending the money and keep seeing those flat results. We want to see a curve like this. And when my curve looks like this, I can go and ask for more money, which is exactly what we want to be able to do in this.
Absolutely.
But the very scary reality, and I'm sorry to be a bit 2025 on this one, but do more with less. And I think we're all hearing that as well, especially with AI, like I've mentioned. It's that constant, do you need headcount or can you do it with AI? Do you need a new tool or can Claude do it? It's those sort of constant conversations that are still happening at the moment. So, this is real.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what that gives ABM is a very tricky challenge. There's a 4-part problem that they need to solve. Firstly, how do we scale our ABM programs with limited resources? Thinking again back to that CFO slide with the 2 different charts, that's the first part. But we need to also leverage the best in new technology, to Becky's point there. We need to find those ways to scale. They're going to have the compound growth effects, be genuinely scalable in ways that can transform the business and help us to grow faster. We also need to tie our efforts back to revenue outcomes. I think that point has been made multiple times this morning. And critically for ABM, the last sort of final point, the cherry on the cake for ABM, as if this problem wasn't hard enough, we also need to not lose the people first bit that made ABM work in the first place. So we cannot afford to jettison that piece in our search for scale and in our search for efficiency, jettison that piece that makes ABM work in the first time, because we're relating to people and their problems and making it very personal and individualized. And so, that takes us to the end of sort of laying out the problem. And what we're going to do next is have a bit of a walk along the Yellow Brick Road with Becky on her journey to the Emerald City, and how Becky is looking to scale up her ABM programs without falling foul of any of the pitfalls that we just saw there. So, Becky.
Yeah, I think, as mentioned, with Dash Zero being so new, we're building everything from scratch. So it's quite a nice place to come in a sense, because there's no sort of legacy patterns that we're following. But this is the Yellow Brick Road to burnout. This is what you don't want to do. So don't pay attention to this bit right now, because this is the painful ABM piece, right? And this is where people can sort of get into the process, and we're going to get that burnout before you know it. It starts with looking at the intelligence, building that strategy and the narrative, building some content. We can build some lovely content, but it's all manual at this point. There's manual personalization going into it. You know, there's distribution. We're sending it out here, there, and everywhere. But you know, is it right? Is it the right person? And then we're hoping our BDRs can then step in and help us convert this to a meeting. But this is linear. This is not going to be scalable. There's no sort of feedback circle in this. This is not how we want to do things. This is just going to cause burnout for everybody involved in this.
Absolutely.
Stress, yes. Pipeline and revenue, very, very questionable at this point. What can we actually prove that we've done? How can we learn from what we're doing? We're just going in like a linear straight line at the moment. So this is what we want to avoid ultimately. And this is the new world that we can sort of look to build. And you know, Nick and I spoke about how we can make the Tin Man into this. So putting the heart into everything again. The pink boxes here are where you can think of like the Tin Man heart, the human piece, where we've spoken about sort of humans do what humans do best. And then everything that's automated, we can push over to the Tin Man to do. And what you'll see here now is we're no longer working in that linear operation anymore. We've got this beautiful flywheel where we're taking everything, we're learning from what we're doing, and we're creating a scalable process ultimately. So we've still got like the same pieces in here, right? But we've got some signal capture coming in now. The BDRs are coming in with all of this all the way around. So what they're able to do, rather than just sort of just go to everybody all the time, is use everything from this flywheel, and just create some amazing conversations at this point.
Absolutely. And the key here, Becky, as you said earlier, is keeping the human in the loop at the right places where judgment is required. So keeping the humans on the strategy and the narrative, on the modular content production, and then as we start to move towards the white boxes there, handing those over to automation, because those are intelligence-based rather than judgment-based tasks, which can be done at scale by clever AI and other automated systems. And to Becky's point as well, every turn of this loop, if we come back to this target intelligence piece here, we're learning and we're improving over time, so that every single turn of this flywheel is getting better and better and delivering better experiences and better marketing into our target accounts.
And if you think of this like in a hierarchy of needs basis now, so we flip this into a pyramid, and again, you've got the Tin Man here working at these sort of bottom chunks of the pyramid. These are really important pieces, right? But again, we want to use the AI, we want to use the automations that we can do for this part here and take away that manual process for everyone. And then it leaves all of our energy focused on these top pink boxes up here, which is where we want our energy to be focused. It's where we are best as humans, and it's where we can really, really make a difference by doing that. And that's what makes it repeatable and scalable ultimately, is by building in this hierarchy of needs.
And just to chime in on this one, there's a really interesting blog post by a guy called Julian Beck from Sequoia, which has kind of made the rounds recently. I don't know if we still say gone viral, but I've certainly had it sent to me by about a dozen people. And what he spoke about was the difference between intelligence-based tasks and judgment-based tasks. And in his mind, intelligence-based tasks are things like the ones that we've got here, where the example he gave was like drafting an NDA. And that's an intelligence-based task because it can be repeated many, many times by a fairly intelligent human being, but it's not a judgment-based task. A judgment-based task in that domain is making sure that the overall risk profile of the business is correct as it relates to NDA. So that's the split between intelligence and judgment. And as I was reading that, Becky, I was thinking about this chart that we've got here, and we've actually been several steps ahead of Julian there, so we're clearly smarter than Sequoia, because all of the stuff in the white, in my mind, those are intelligence-based tasks. Those can be automated. And this is why we're seeing such a rise of things like Claude Code, where I think he was saying that 50% of all AI agentic deployments are in the coding space at the moment. Other sectors are catching up. The reason why is there's so much intelligence-based work there. There's judgment-based work as well, but that's why Claude Code and that whole side of things has really taken off. And so, it's quite nice that the way, Becky, that you're designing your ABM program is exactly respecting that system, where the humans are at the top doing the judgment-based bits, the bits where we can add the most value, and we're delegating the intelligence-based stuff as much as possible through to automation and AI. So I thought that was quite an interesting parallel. Clearly, as I say, we're smarter than Julian. I'll send him an email. And so to dive in a little bit more detail, I'm going to go down the rabbit hole a little bit on some of these boxes, because the overall diagram is kind of helpful to understand the shape of it, but you might be wondering exactly what this looks like in practice. So we're going to have a look at 3 boxes as we go around the diagram. The first one is about modular content production and personalization at scale. We're going to look at how we can turn that into an intelligence-based automatable task. The second is around signal capture, which is pretty interesting. Number of talks already talking about signals and the importance of those. And lastly, looking at pipeline and revenue reporting and target intelligence. So we're going to dive in and have a look at each of those in turn very, very briefly. So the first one, modular content production and personalization at scale. So what this is all about is producing a set of master assets, landing pages, documents, newsletters, you name it, all of those different pieces, but crucially configuring them so that they can be intelligently personalized. So rules and systems for understanding who should see what, when, why, and how, and on which channels, encoding all of that in the content. What that allows you to do then is to take all of your contact and account level signals and data, run that through that core library of assets, and create, we've done 3 here, but thousands, tens of thousands of personalized assets, landing pages, emails at scale. A great example of turning an intelligence-based task, the need to personalize content for an individual contact or account, turning that into an automated system. So this is the first little piece that we pulled out on the diagram there. But you can actually go further, and worth mentioning this given the other sponsors of today. Demand-based 6sense Apollo, those types of people who provide third-party intent signals. The ability then to run personalized display ads that then sitting behind them, you've got personalized assets behind those as well. And that helps to build that flywheel where you're taking all of that intent, providing a bespoke personalized experience, but then, as we're going to see, also capturing those signals that are going to help you improve with the next turn of the handle. So that's even more Tin Man, intent provider integrations. But when you send out assets like that, and if you've got them tracked and configured properly, according to the maths that we do with our book of customers, every reading session that someone makes on a landing page on a document generates over 1,200 data points, a huge amount of data. Which pages did they read? Which did they skip? Did they share? Did they go here? Did they fill in the form? All of that data. And that's all great stuff. So that signal capture bit, using sort of static offline formats, you don't get that, but obviously if you're doing stuff in personalized interactive ways, you do get all of that data, but creates a problem, because if you do that for 6 months and you do it at reasonable scale, this is a stat from AWS, I think this is the amount of data they generated in about a month, they generated 250,000 data points, which is great, but also rubbish. It's great because you've learned a huge amount, but it's rubbish because how do you interrogate that? How do you understand it? And this is where, again, the Tin Man and AI has such a powerful impact, because if you give this to poor Dorothy on her own, or Becky, as it may be, you're probably going to need 8 weeks and a big team of spreadsheet geniuses in order to make sense of that data. Imagine being given 250 data points and asked, what pipeline revenue did we generate and influence? Who's showing engagement patterns we should act on? By the time you've got the insight, it's going to be irrelevant. The prospect, the account will have moved on. But this is the wonderful thing about AI, is that according to our benchmarks, you can give AI 3.8 seconds across that data set, and it will be able to answer these questions, provided that you've got it connected up to the right places. So imagine being able to take all of that data and answer which messaging is resonating best with our different audiences, because then you can double down and do more of it into those accounts. Whereas our advertising spend having the best ROI, this is a really interesting one. We see all the time where people will be running LinkedIn campaigns, Twitter campaigns, and they'll be looking at cost per click. But actually what we find is that if you optimize for cost per click, you actually end up not optimizing for engagement. So you might have the best cost per click on LinkedIn, but people only engage for 10 seconds, whereas Twitter or X is 10 times more expensive, but people engage for 10 times as long. So which one do you want? So AI helping to answer those questions. And crucially, all of those laddering up to where we can double down to accelerate our results. So those are 3 things that we picked out from that diagram, from that flywheel. But there's also the BDR point.
And I actually started my career as a BDR or SDR, and at that time, I didn't have the luxury of intent. I would be given a HubSpot alert or hundreds of thousands of leads to go through and figure it out myself as to where on earth do I get started in this. And if I was given the option for intent, every single time I would choose to target those with intent. And that doesn't just sit within the SDR, BDR thing, it sits within marketing, right? If you've got a limited amount of dollars to spend, you want to spend those showing some sort of intent, because that's where you're going to get some sort of quicker AI, right? Quicker ROI onto that. So target those with intent every single time for me.
Yeah. And the results that you can get from that are pretty staggering. So I'll run through these very quickly. AWS is a perfect example of what we just spoke through. Literally the output of their flywheel was to get an ordered list of accounts by engagement level. So how many people engaged, how deeply, but also critically, which topics did they care about, which did they not care about. Their BDR team were then able to call up the right people at the right time with the right message. Lo and behold, the commercial results were better and they smashed their pipe gen target. Kantar, running a similar program, saw a 550% increase in marketing attributed revenue. 8x8 were able to generate an incremental 5 million in pipe gen. Quite interesting actually, earlier I think it was Robert was talking about partner ABM. or running ABM through partners. That's what ABM 8x8 did, and they got amazing results. And Dash Zero, watch this space. We're in the first stages with Dash Zero, but I know it's going to be an amazing journey. And so.
Yeah, so for us, there's a few things we need to obviously focus on doing next, and that is sort of scaling the program with limited resources. As I mentioned, we're a new company. I've got a very small team, and I have to look at doing this smart so we don't end up in that linear line with all of us burning out, right? We need to leverage the best technology, like Turtle, for example, or 6Sense, or Demandbase. We've got to make sure we're using what we have really well to create a really good effort here. The revenue outcomes, like I've mentioned, is so important, and particularly if I want to get paid more, which all of us want more money, right? So I need to make sure I can tie it to revenue outcomes and show people that it's a perfect ABM we're running at the moment. And then this is the most amazing thing first, like don't lose the people first piece. It's, this is what makes ABM work. It's what makes marketing work ultimately. If we push everything to AI, we've lost the heart of everything we do, and I think that's what none of us want to do anymore.
It's about separating the judgment from the intelligence work. And actually that takes us nicely, Becky, onto your North Star for all of this.
Yeah, the North Star of this, obviously, the best use of a human is never on a repeatable task. So let's get AI to do the really boring, repeatable things, and let's keep that human heart and everything that we can make us and we can make human and we can keep it real.
Absolutely. And so, to quickly recap, we've covered over the last sort of 20-ish minutes the tornado of present-day B2B marketing. We looked at GTM disruption, we looked at tech disruption, we looked at geopolitical disruption. We've covered the fact that none of that is going to pass us by, the impact it's having on ABM, the ABM's dilemma in 2026, which Becky just nicely outlined for us there, and also the Yellow Brick Road to success, the kind of things that we can do to position ourselves well in that very dynamic present and future. And so as a business, we've got a video hopefully we can play in a minute. We spend a lot of time thinking about these things and how we can support businesses in solving them. So it felt rude to come all the way to Amsterdam and not share a little bit about the stuff that we've been working on. So then it's possible to press play on that somehow. Oh, we have no sound. Never mind. Well, if you want to come over to the stand and understand a bit more about this, please do. It's great stuff. We'll be very glad to take you through it. But we'll skip that. We'll move on. So, thank you for listening. Apologies for the technical challenges there. If you didn't get a chance to scan the QR code at the start to access the ABM 2030 report, now is your chance. I don't know if we have time for questions, but if we do, yeah. Great.
What questions, while we just get the mic to you, just what struck me listening to that, and it's relevant for everybody in the room, there's no coincidence that you're near unicorn status and you have a focus on marketing, on revenue, and I think you probably should be Chief Revenue Officer from what you said. But it just struck me that 10% compound week-on-week growth, that sort of ambition, is really lofty. But for us mere mortals in the room, what was central to this was still content. Content seems to be the engine for growth. How you distribute it clearly is on at scale, but content is still really important for you.
100%, and my industry is a deeply technical industry as well, so we have technical guide writers, we have content writers, campaign managers, because ultimately for us to ever show up in a room, we need the devs to understand what the product is. They need to be in it, they need to be playing with it, so we have to make sure that we are tapping into the field that's so important. Content will always be key for us. And beautiful content is even better, right? No one wants to read boring content.
But getting it out at scale to audiences, personalised, yeah, got it. Brilliant. Right, one question we've got from the audience? There must be a question after such a brilliant presentation. Yes, there's one here. Just tell us who you are and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Valentina. I'm coming from Munich from a B2B company, tech company, similar, way smaller, heading there. The question is, what type of intent signals do you use? And actually, I have a follow-up question related to content. How do you influence the content that is being produced in the company? Yeah,
so I think intent signals are just key to everything we're doing. So we take infographics, thermographics, everything we can get hold of, ultimately. We're pushing it into our HubSpot. We use HubSpot system. The workflows are generated from sort of every piece of intent we can possibly find. The sales then prioritise based on sort of what they can reach out to, who they can reach out to with what information. Again, right message, right person, right time. And that's the key thing. I think we can always get bogged down with too many intent signals at time, and you can sort of get flooded with this. So we tend to focus on making sure that we are using the right intent signals for like the ICP accounts, target accounts, not sort of going too small, making sure we're like really focusing on what we're doing. But intent is key ultimately. So that's absolutely the best thing you can do, is just focus on those. And from a marketing point of view as well, it's making sure that we're using those to push into our paid ads, for example, doubling down there, sending the content to those people ultimately. What was your second part of the question, sorry?
How do you influence, if you have any influence on the content that is being produced, then what's your take on the aligning the content strategy with your account-based marketing?
Yeah, so thankfully I've got an incredible team of technical content writers, because I am not technical, and it is a deeply technical product. So for me, I really lean on the most amazing technical team that we've got, like our developers. We have a very, very heavy focus on community as well. So we will show up in all the community events. We've got a developer relations team as well. They will be there, they'll be collecting information from the field. We're paying attention constantly to sort of what's been spoken about in the market. We've got a lot of sort of social listening going on as well. Things like Reddit are really important for us as well. So it's taking all of those, again, more signals right on the market, what people want to engage in. But then when we think about this side of things, which I'm building at the moment, right? I can't give you the results because I'm still building, but I will be using all of the data we've got and then doubling down on where we need to double down ultimately to make sure it's relevant. But having excellent developer relations, community, product marketers that know their stuff and they're excellent in their field, I won't pretend that I am, because I'm not. And if I do pretend, I will fail. So I lean on the people that are experts in what they do.
I think the other point quickly on signals is that we're in a world now where we don't have to guess which ones work. So it's possible now to start to build predictive models to tell us not just, are our assumptions right around the signals that correlate with the outcomes that we want, but actually to tell us. So to look backwards and to understand, is it that signal, is it this signal, what's the right weighting? We don't need to guess anymore, because AI can actually mine all of that data and tell us. So in my view, collecting as many signals as possible and then understanding which ones correlate with the right outcomes and then focusing on those, that's something that's possible now at scale.
Brilliant. Brilliant presentation, great questions, thank you very much. Please, round of applause.